started.
Hey, Bob, if a town of an individual became public property, we may make an error for its entirety. But if a public town became an individual's, we may not make an error for its entirety unless we exclude an area from an equivalent to the town of Hadasha in Judea, which has 50 inhabitants. These are the words of Reb Yehuda. Reb Shimon says 3 courtyards containing 2 dwellings. One who was to the east had then told his son, make an arrow for me in the west, to the west, and he told his son, make an arrow for me in the east. If the distance from him to his house is 2,000 cubits, and to his Erev more than that, he is permitted the tachum of the house, but forbidden the tachum of his Erev. If to his Erev is 2,000 cubits, and his house more than that, he is forbidden the tachum of his house, but forbidden the tachum of the Erev. One who places his Erev in the extension of the town has accomplished nothing. If he placed it beyond the tachum, even one avis, then whatever he gains, he loses. The residents of a large town can make traverse a small town, but the residents of a small town may not traverse an entire large town. How so? One who is in a large town and places the Erev in a small town, or in a small town and places the Erev in a large town, may traverse its entirety and 2,000 amit behind it. But Rabbi Kiva says he has no more than 2,000 amit from the place of his Erev. Okay.
Okay, Amar Lahen Rabbi Akiva. So this is continuing the previous Mishnah where there was the argument between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. Rabbi Akiva was saying that if you place your Erev Techumen inside a city, you still only draw a square of 2,000 amas outside the food, not outside the city.
Uh,
Okay, and here comes his reasoning. Amar Lehen Rabbi Akiva. Listen, what would happen if you had a situation where Yatem Modimli benosin erev b'mara, he puts his erev food inside a cave. Okay, now she'ein lo mimakom erevo ela alpaim ama. That okay? If you got a cave, you don't take the entire area of the cave as a. This is talking about you don't take the entire area of the cave. You just say from there. And then you sort of imagine an aerial view from above the cave, and I've got 2,000 amas around where he put this food inside the cave. You don't take the habitable area of the cave, and and draw around that. And that apparently was a well-known halacha. And he says, okay, this is my proof that the food does not give you the area of the place that you're putting it in, only its own place. Amrulo, the Chachamim said back to Rabbi Akiva, nah, Emasai, you said halacha well, but that's not but you're missing a critical point. Bisman she'en badiurin. That's in a place where the rest of the cave is not habitable.
uh, so,
Okay, aval yesh badiurin. If it is a habitable cave, then yeah, actually the halacha is like we're saying, mahalech is kula bechutzala alpaim ama. Then you get the benefit of of being able to go around the entire cave, and then from outside it, then you start measuring the 2,000 amas. So it seems like there's a what's the word a point of divergence that where they disagree about this fundamental halacha about the cave. Anyway, nimtza kal tocha me'al gaba. So therefore, we see that the interior of the cave is more lenient, or than putting the food on top of the cave, because on top of the cave is definitely not habitable, and therefore you'd only get 2,000 amas exactly around where the food is, but inside the cave you get the benefit of the rest of the cave. ולמודד שאמרו נוסין לו אלפיים שאפילו סוף מידסו קלה במערה. So for the ולמודד שאמרו, this is so the Chachamim said in the previous Mishnah, who measures from the place of his shrisa 2,000 amas. So they give him 2,000 amas. In other words, even though the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Akiva when he puts his eruv in a cave that is habitable, that the whole thing is considered like his daled amas. Nonetheless, They agree with Rabbi Akiva when he measures his techum in from the place of his shrisa when he sits down and like sits down under a tree in the field or whatever, that you only give him the 2,000 amas around where he's sitting down. And even if the end of his 2,000 amas ends inside the cave, then we agree with you that the 2,000 amas ends there. I mean, and we said that this before, when even if the 2,000 amas ends inside a city, that's where it ends. It doesn't give you the benefit of the rest of the city. So wherever you are, your general rule is like when do you get to add the city is when your starting point is inside the city or inside the cave or whatever. So your starting point is either where you sat down for the Shabbos, where you were at the entrance of Shabbos, or if you had an Eruv, wherever your Eruv food is. If your Eruv is inside the city, wow, you get the whole city. That's great. But not but you don't take the end of the 2,000 amas and say, okay, now we can add on more.
All right. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Good.
Perek Vav. Hadar im hanochri b'chatzer. All right. If somebody has got one non-Jewish resident in the shared chatzer. So you've got a shared courtyard and a few houses around, and one of them is owned by a non-Jew. Um, or im misha eno modi be'eruv, or he lives with somebody who does not believe in this whole idea of the eruv. In other words, somebody who doesn't believe in Torah Shebal Peh or in Gezeres D'Rabbanan. Okay, so for example, a kuti is in this category. Okay, hareze oser elav. So that prevents you from carrying in your chatzer. Now, if it was a Jew who simply forgot to join in with the Eruv, see he even on Shabbos he can be mevater and he can say, okay, I renounce my rights to this courtyard, and that means everyone else is allowed to carry inside the courtyard. But the non-Jew and the person and the Kuti who doesn't believe in the idea of an Eruv, they can't be mevater in it because they're not in part of the parsha in the first place.
Well, if he's living with someone who doesn't accept the halacha,
He
he
doesn't.
can't
No,
do anything with an Arab.
you can't do anything. So the only way you can do it is if he actually buys it. You can buy the rishus from the person and say, like, "Listen, I want to." In money talks, that's a real transaction. Saying, "Listen, I want to buy your rights to the chatzah during Shabbos."
Why should that non-believer have the power, so to speak, to
No, but
keep
because,
some?
because because that's a real thing, is having your rights to the chatzar. I'm buying it. This is money. That's actually a real transaction. Saying like I'm buying your right to part of this chatzar, and you can say, listen, I don't want your money. He can say, I don't want it. You're talking nonsense. What do you? And that's exactly the kind of friction that Chazal was trying to put over there, by saying this, because what they didn't want was people taking up residence with a non-Jew in the courtyard, because especially in those times the non-Jews were not very nice people to learn from. And they didn't want them to being influenced by non-Jewish people living inside their courtyard. So make yourself a nice little ghetto, and this is now putting some friction there, saying if you do buy yourself a property there, or if a Jew sells to the non-Jew in the Chatzer, then it's going to make life difficult for the other people in the Chatzer. So this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer leolam eino oser ad sheyu shnei Yisraelim osrim ze al ze. So he's a little more lenient than Rabbi Meir. He says that the the restriction is specifically when you have two or more Yisraelim who are in the Chatzer. Um, he said we don't need to make a gezerah if there's only one Yisrael, because the one Yisrael is going to be afraid to live in a Chatzer with a bunch of non-Jews anyway, because they were kind of prone to bloodshed at the time. So he said, okay, there's no need to make the gezerah in that case, but in general, but if there are more Jews there, then we don't want you to get too comfortable about the situation, and therefore we have this restriction on you.
Okay.
Mishnah base, Amar Rabban Gamliel. So he says Maaseh b'tzduki echad shehaya dar imanu b'mavoi b'Yerushalayim. He said we actually had such a situation. There was a tzduki. Now tzduki also they're Jewish, but
Right,
they don't believe in Torah Sheba'al Peh. They don't accept the authority of Chazal.
right.
Okay, so he was living with us in this Mavoi. V'amar lanu Abba, Maharu v'hotziu es kol hakelim lemavoi ad shelo yotzi v'yasor aleichem. So apparently they went and bought the rights to use the chatzir from this tzduki and said and Rabban Gamliel is saying, so what happened in my family is that, and this Maaseh is a proof that you can buy the right of passage and use and therefore have a valid Erev Chatzeros by handing over the money. Money talks, and he said this is the Maaseh Shehaya, and you see, and what did Abba say to us? Go and take out all of the kalim into the mavoi to make a chazaka of the courtyard. Now that's not a normal way that you make a chazaka. You can't make a
Right.
chazaka by putting things in there. But in this particular case, we're talking about a din rabban, and rabbanan allowed them to make the statement by putting stuff into the mavoi before the guy changes his mind basically and puts his own stuff out there and sort of invalidates the deal. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. He comes and disputes this memory of Rabban Gamliel. He says, "Nah, you've got the facts wrong." B'lashon acher, maru v'asu tzorcheichem b'mavoi ad shelo yotzi v'yesor aleichem. Um, he said, "Hurry and do everything that you need in the mavoi ad shelo yotzi." In other words, until ad shelo yetze hayom, until basically before Shabbos comes in. Do your stuff in the alley before Shabbos comes in, because when Shabbos comes in, he's going to usher it on you, and therefore what he's saying that's the statement that you're that having um that having the tzedukah in the courtyard is going to prevent you from carrying in the courtyard on Shabbos. So he
Right.
said you can't do the deal at all. So each one has got their own interpretation of what happened with Rabban Gamliel's family that supports his own position on the halacha. Okay.
Okay. Gimel Hay. A person may attach a condition to his Erev and say, if the Gentiles come from the east, my Erev is to the west, and from the west, my Erev is to the east. If they come from both directions, I go to the place I choose. If they do not come from either direction, I am as my town people. If a scholar comes from the east, my Erev is to the east, and from the west, my Erev is to the west. If one comes to here and one comes to there, I shall go to the place I choose. If to neither direction, I am as my townspeople. Rabbi Yehuda says, if one of the scholars was his teacher, he must go to his teacher. But if both were his teachers, he may go to the place he chooses. Rabbi Eliezer says, if Yom Tov joins the Sabbath either before or after, a person may make two Eruvim and declare, my Erev is for the first to the east and for the second to the west, for the first to the west and for the second to the east. My Erev is for the first, but for the second I am as town people. Well, my Erev is for the second, but for the first I'm as my town people. But the comments say he makes an Erev in one direction, or he makes no Erev at all. Either he makes an Erev for both days, or he makes no Erev at all. How should one proceed? He should take it on the first and stay with it until nightfall, then take it and go. And on the second, he should stay with it until nightfall, and then eat it. Thus, he benefits in his walking area, and he benefits from his Erev. If it was eaten on the first, the Erev is valid for the first, but the Erev is not valid for the second. Rabbi Eliezer says, so you agree with me that these are two periods of holiness. Rabbi Yehuda says, if before Rosh Hashanah there was a concern that Elul was full, a person may make two Erevim and declare, my Erev is for the first to the east and for the second to the west. For the first to the west and for the second to the east. My Erev is for the first, but for the second I am as my town people, or my Erev is for the second, but of the first I am as my town people. But the comment did not agree with him.
Okay.
Additionally,
That's it.
that was it. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Shabbos.
Stop it. Yud Aleph Vav. One who threw something and reminded himself after his, I'm sorry, one who threw something and reminded himself after he had left his hand, or another person caught it and a dog caught it, or it was burnt in flight, it is exempt. If one flew a stone with an intention of inflicting a wound upon either a man or a beast, and he reminded himself when the wound was not yet inflicted, he's exempt. This is the rule. All who are liable for sin offerings are not liable unless the beginning and the end of their acts are both inadvertent. If the beginning was inadvertent but the end was intentional, or if the beginning was intentional and the end was inadvertent, they are exempt unless the beginning and end are inadvertent. One who builds, how much must he build to be liable? One who builds any amount, one who chisels a stone, strikes with a hammer or with an adze, or drills any amount is liable. This is the rule. Anyone who works and his work endures on the Sabbath is liable. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says anyone who strikes with a sledgehammer on the anvil while working is liable, since he is as one who improves the work. And one who plows any amount, one who weeds or prunes a branch, dry branches or prunes young shoots in any amount is liable. One who gathers wood, or if his intent to effect an improvement, he's liable for any amount. If his intent for kindling, he's liable for the amount of wood required to cook an easily cooked egg. One who gathers grasses, if his intent is to effect an improvement, he is liable for any amount. If in any language, he is liable. Is that right? Yeah.
But
Sorry,
wait. Yes.
No, he is liable for any amount. If his intent is for an animal fodder, he is liable for as much as a kid's mouthful.
Okay.
Yeah. And Maestros. Okay, base. No, base olive. If one was passing through the street and said, take yourselves some figs, they may eat and exempt. Therefore, if they brought them into their houses, they tied them as definite. Take and bring them into your houses, they may not eat of them in chance meal, and therefore, if they took them into their houses, they tithe only them as to buy. If they were sitting in a doorway or a shop and he said, take yourselves some figs, they may eat and exempt. But the owners of the doorway of the shop are liable. And Rabbi Yehuda exempts unless he turns away his face or changes the place where he was sitting. If one carries up produce from Galil to Judea or sends to Yerushalayim, he may eat of it until he reaches his destination, and so too on his return. Reb Meir says until he reaches the place where he will spend the Sabbath, and peddlers who go around from town to town may eat until they reach the place where they intend to spend the night. Reb Yehuda says the first house is his house.
Okay.
And mikvos. Cat hay. If Anita put money into her mouth and she went down and immersed herself, she is purified of her tumor, but she is still tummy on her account of her saliva. If she put her hair in her mouth, or she clenched her hair, or she pressed her lips together, it is as if she is not immersed herself at all. If one person holds utensils, or holds a person utensils and immerses them, they remain tummy, but if he rinses his hands in water, they become tahor. Reb Shimon says he may loosen his holds and the water should enter in between. Concealed areas and folded areas do not require that the water should enter into them. The following items intervene in the case of a person: woolen threads, linen threads, and the ribbons on girls' heads. The Yehuda says those of wool and of hair do not intervene because the water passes between them. The entangled hair on the chest or the beard or of a woman's private parts, rheum outside the eye or incrustation outside the room, or a plaster on it, dried sap, incrustations of dirt on one's body, dough under the nail, beads or of a foreign substance, slimy mud, potter's clay, slimy puddles. What is meant by slimy mud? It is mud found in pits, as it is stated, and he raises me from a tempestuous pit from slimy mud. What is meant by potter's clay? Its literal meaning, Rabbi Yossi declares tahor if one immersed with potter's clay, but if it declares tamei if one immersed with sealing clay. What is meant by slimy puddles? They become dried up studs of the doorway. In these types of mud, we may not immerse ourselves. Nor may we immerse them, but we immerse with any mud if it is wet. We may not immerse oneself with dust on his feet, nor immerse with kettle on a kettle with soot on it, unless he rubbed it off. The following items do not intervene in tangled hair of the head. That's it? Okay.
Yeah.
Woolen. If this Zayat if the sinew of a thigh was cooked with other sinews, when he recognizes it, it only prohibits only if imparts a flavor. If not, all are prohibited, but the broth is prohibited only if a flavor was imparted to it. Similarly, a piece of nevela, and similarly a piece of non-kosher fish that was cooked with other pieces, when he recognizes them, they're prohibited only if they impart a flavor. If not, they're all prohibited, but the broth is prohibited only if a flavor was imparted to it. It applies to a kosher animal, but does not apply to a non-kosher animal. Rabbi Yehuda says also to a non-kosher animal, said Rabbi Yehuda, but the sinew of the thigh was prohibited since the sons of Jacob, when non-kosher animals were still permissible to them, they said to him, it was stated at Sinai, but it was written in a place. And it is forbidden to cook any meat with milk except the meat of fish and locusts. Moreover, it is forbidden to bring it up with cheese on the table except for the meat of fish and locusts. If one vows to abstain from meat, he is prohibited to eat to eat the meat of fish and locusts. Fowl may be brought up with cheese on the table, but may not be eaten. These are the words of Beit Shammai, but Hillel says it may neither be brought up nor eaten. And Rabbi Yossi says this is the one of the lenient rulers of Beit Shammai and the stringent rulers of Beit Hillel. Okay, concerning which table did they say? This concerning the table upon which he eats, but concerning the table on which he sets up the food, he may place one next to the other without apprehension.
Right. So your kitchen counters are okay to have meat and milk simultaneously because that's not where you eat.
Right, most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay, Gimel Vav. If a mincha offering offered became tummy before it was sanctified in a service vessel, it is all like other mincha offerings, and it may be redeemed. But if after it was sanctified in a service vessel, it is like all other mincha offerings, and it must be burned. These are the ones whose mincha offerings must be burned. One who says, I am defiled to you, and one whom witnesses testify she is defiled, and one who says, I will not drink, or one whose husband did not want to give her to drink, or whose husband cohabitated with her on the way. The mincha offerings of all are married to Kohanim must be burned. If the daughter of a non-Kohen married a Kohen, a mincha offering must be burned. But if the daughter of a Kohen married a non-Kohen, a mincha offering is eaten. How does the Kohen differ from the daughter of a Kohen? The mincha offering of a Kohen's daughter is eaten, while the mincha offering of a Kohen is not eaten. A Kohen's daughter may be disentitled, but a Kohen cannot be disentitled. The Kohen's daughter may contaminate herself with tumah of the dead, but a Kohen may not contaminate herself with the tumah of the dead. And a Kohen may eat of the most all the holy offerings, but the daughter of a Kohen may not eat of the most holy offerings. How does a man differ from a woman? A man who is a mature must allow his hair to grow and must rend his garments. But a woman need not let her hair grow or rend her garments. A man can oppose a vow of inheritance on a son, but a woman cannot oppose a vow of inheritance on a son. A man can shave his head at the conclusion of his Naziris on the basis of the Naziris offerings of his father, but a woman cannot shave her head on the basis of the Naziris offerings of her father. And a man can sell his daughter, but a woman cannot sell her daughter. A man can betroth his daughter, but a woman cannot betroth a daughter. A man is stone naked, but a woman is not stone naked. A man's body is hung, but a woman's body is not hung. And a man can be sold for his theft, but a woman cannot be sold for her theft. Okay.
Adkan.
Okay. Great.
All right. Have a
Okay.
good
Have a
day.
great day. Enjoy. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.